Okay, so I know this isn't the best video. It's late at night on the 27th of September, and I was trying to think of a way to basically um, elegantly express my feelings, just kind of about the times that we're living in regarding just the craziness, the divisiveness, the mainly this what I've written is about crossing the line, and it's also about arrogance, and it's about not understanding the power of God. It is a pro-life piece that I've written. It is about abortion, and it is about feminism, but I've written it in the way where I'm really talking about our strength in God and our weakness when we just really try to follow our own agenda. So I've taken this from, I've been inspired by Job 38, and I'm in my room. My dog is snoring in the corner, so just bear with me. But I wanted to put it on, just to document it as well. And I do have an ebook that you guys can download on this as well. But I'm just going to start. It's called "Where the Proud Waves Halt: Ode to the Waves of Destruction." In Job 38, that's 8 through 11, the Lord speaks. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place? When I said, this far you may come and no farther. This is where your proud waves halt. And so I go on to really talk about the sea. So I'm just going to read it. The first wave. The seas were rough. The woman felt oppressed, weathered, and exhausted. She was growing weary. The first wave came, making an impact on her journey and bringing her closer to home. She was humbled and grateful, remembering the raw power of the wind and the strength of nature that came from a good God who created her perfectly and loved her dearly. The wave came up under her boat and lifted her gently to a point where there was a soft wind in her sail, taking her toward a beautiful paradise. She was grateful for the advances she had made on that wave, recognizing that her journey to freedom was impossible without God, her Father. The second wave. As time passed, the woman started to forget that the first and original wave of power came from a strong and loving God who ruled all of creation. God didn't make mistakes when it came to human design, but the woman began to believe that she could sail the seas in her own power. She started to question whether the vessel she was birthed in was a good vessel or not. She turned the helm away from God's destination. She didn't appreciate that with God as the captain of the vessel, there would be times when a turn would take her toward a place she would rather not go. She ripped off part of the sail and threw it overboard. It was the very heart of the vessel's motherboard. She forgot about the raw and beautiful power of bowing with her sail to the authority of nature that created the wind and the waves. She believed she ruled and commanded her destiny by her own power. So the second wave came, and she decided to ride that wave toward a place where she assumed she would become like God. She began to grow bitter and angry that her original vessel had moments of weakness, where her personal plans were obscured for God's direction. She rode that wave, and other women followed, believing that if they also altered their vessels, they could reach a beautiful place that was much better than the paradise of freedom that God had set aside for them. Had they rode out the wave God had sent, trusting Him and bowing with sincere humility and gratitude at the awesome workmanship that carried their souls, they would have enjoyed a smooth sail with momentum, taking them to a place beyond their wildest dreams. Instead, the rough seas grew painful and pounded up against them, taking them to a destination that was chained and anchored with despair, regret, guilt, bitterness, arrogance, shame, and deception. Some would drown in that second wave. while some would come up gasping for air, pleading for mercy, while realizing the mistakes they had made by throwing the heart of their being and identity overboard. Still, most didn't turn toward their Father in heaven. Instead, they created an altar of two wombless goddesses that promised them power to reign on a sea where children had been thrown out of the boats or left to drift without a hand extended by those who used to call themselves mothers. The third wave. The third wave was about to come. This wave allowed each woman who claimed to be the captain of her altered vessel to elevate herself to goddess in any way she wanted. This wave was a proud wave. This wave was illogical and beyond reasoning. The third wave was born from the second wave, but wouldn't claim to know or be able to identify the first wave at all. It had been too long since anyone even remembered the first wave journey that could have taken them into a paradise of freedom created by God. The third wave claimed it would be a tsunami that could annihilate that godly paradise. The women who claimed to be captains of their vessels and goddesses deceptively believed that they could change the entire landscape of the future on their own. They had no fear of the one true God who could shut up the sea behind doors and swaddle the clouds up in garments of thick darkness. They went on arrogantly, worshiping their idols and attempting to navigate a wayward wave that eventually would be shut up behind doors by the very one who created the sea and all who claimed to be able to float and cruise on it without reverence. The old and new wave returns. Next, there came a new wave that was also an old wave. There's no beginning and no end to this wave. This wave is the source of all waves throughout history. Its power, truth, and magnificence has been long forgotten, but this is the wave of justice. The vessels on the original waves had never needed alterations. The knitting in the sails never were intended to be torn. The absence of the heart and fabric of the motherboard would only eventually lead it to sink into the depths of the abyss. In time, God spoke because he had watched as the choices of the unrighteous had polluted his sea for too long. His words were loud, causing the dark ocean to tremble. Lightning bolts appeared as each word spoken from the creator of the sea reverberated as the God of justice roared, "Here is where your proud waves halt. Here is where your proud waves halt. Here is where your proud waves halt." God had spoken. The sea grew calm. He went on to talk about the limits he has set and how there comes a place in time where the sea is held back by his authority, and there will be no advancement without love, humility, and reverence for the Father, the creator of all the vessels of humanity. It was time for the proud waves to cast out their goddess worship, to lighten their boats and restore the sails and motherboard, bowing to the Father who would lead them to their beautiful paradise on the shores ahead. God the Father demanded justice for all. It was time for his children to be embraced and brought into the vessels that were now transformed into families. The waves were humbled and calm. The beauty and truth of the ocean illuminated in its reverence as the sun began to shine. The vessels were finally able to grow full in the way God had created them to be. The children that were born in the freedom paradise never had to worry about being left drifting without love. All who lived in that paradise had the wisdom and humility to worship, honor, glorify, and praise the one who had the power to command the stars to shine, order the oceans to rage, inspire the angels to sing, and humble the proud waves to carry in the heart of their vessels the children that God had declared sacred.